Antigravity is Google's agentic coding platform. And if you haven't touched it yet, the simplest way to think about it is a development environment built around AI agents instead of you typing every line yourself. It started as a cursor-style competitor, basically an editor with a smart assistant bolted on. But it grew into something bigger. At Google I/O on May 19th, the team shipped Antigravity 2.0, and that release turned it from a single coding app into a whole ecosystem. You now get a desktop app that can run several agents at the same time, a command line tool, an SDK for building your own agents, a managed agents API, and an enterprise path on top of all that. The headline idea behind 2.0 is multi-agent work. Instead of one agent doing one thing while you wait, you can fire off a few of them in parallel. Hand each one a different task and let them grind in the background while you do something else. The Anti-gravity CLI is the part that got the most attention, and there's a real reason for that. It's a separate terminal tool, written in Go, and it shares the same agent core as the desktop app. That matters because any fix Google ships lands in both at once, instead of two tools drifting apart over time. By default, it runs on Gemini 3.5 Flash, and it's fast. People have clocked it at around 289 tokens per second, which for a terminal agent feels close to instant. But the bigger story is what's happening to the old Gemini CLI. Google is retiring it. On June 18, 2026, the legacy Gemini CLI and the Gemini Code Assist IDE extensions stop serving requests for Google AI Pro, AI Ultra, and free individual users. Enterprise customers with standard or enterprise licenses keep working, and anyone using a paid API key is fine too. But for regular individual developers, that old tool becomes a dead end after that date. So the CLI updates aren't just nice to have. For a lot of people, they're the only path forward. Some of the pushback is worth knowing about before you commit. The old Gemini CLI was open source. The new Anti-gravity CLI is closed source, and a chunk of the developer crowd is not happy about that. Reports also note it doesn't have full feature parity yet, so a few things you relied on might not be there on day one. Google says the core ideas carry over, things like agent skills, hooks, subagents, and extensions, which now show up as anti-gravity plugins. And the reasoning they gave is that people's needs shifted toward agents that talk to each other and split up work, so they decided to put their energy into one harness instead of maintaining two. Whether you buy that or not, the deadline is firm, so it's good to plan around it now rather than in mid-June. With that said, the recent fixes start to make a lot more sense. Google added the IDE integration that a lot of people wanted. If you have the desktop app but not the IDE installed, you now get a one-click install button right there. And if it's already installed, you get an Open IDE button that opens your current project directly in the Anti-gravity IDE. Small thing, but it removes a lot of friction. The one catch is that the threads don't sync across the two surfaces. So if you were working on something in the main anti-gravity interface and you jump into the IDE, you won't see that same conversation waiting for you. You can't pick up exactly where you left off. For a product that keeps talking about being usable everywhere, that gap feels off, and it's the kind of thing that'll probably get fixed, but right now, it's a real limitation. Also, they cleaned up a batch of launch bugs, and these are interesting because they show what actually broke when 2.0 went live. One of the strange ones was project migration failing when the thread title had certain characters in it, specifically CJK characters, which covers Chinese, Japanese, and Korean text. If your old project from Anti-gravity 1.0 had a title using those, the migration would choke on it. The likely cause was something around how the system was escaping or handling those strings, and it didn't hit everyone, which is what made it confusing to track down. That's fixed now. They also fixed a problem where importing from version 1.0 would create duplicate projects, so you'd end up with two copies of the same thing cluttering your workspace. And also resolved a bug where Google One credits weren't being applied, so people who had credits available simply weren't getting them used. Then on May 28, it includes more reliability and usability work across the board, plus another pass at the Google One credit issue. So the credit handling got a second fix, which tells you the first one didn't fully solve it. That's pretty common with billing and credit logic, since it touches a lot of edge cases, but it's worth knowing if you were counting on those credits working cleanly. The CLL side got the most useful round of changes. The biggest one for me, and for a lot of other people, was the OAuth credentials finally persisting. Before this, you'd authenticate in the terminal, and then your login just wouldn't stick. So you'd have to sign in again and again, which is exactly the kind of paper cut that makes you stop using a tool. That's fixed now, and the difference is night and day if you live in the terminal. There was also a color scheme complaint that got a lot of traction. On some terminals, the default CLI colors were basically unreadable. The answer for now is that you have to set it manually, because unlike Claude Code, which detects your terminal config and adjusts automatically, the Anti-gravity CLI doesn't do that detection yet. So if your colors look bad, go into Settings and look for Color Scheme. And here's the annoying part. If you search for the word theme, which is what most people would type, you won't find anything. You have to search Color Scheme specifically. They've said proper auto detection is coming, but for now, that manual step is your fix. Windows users got some love, too. The CLI experience on Windows is supposed to feel smoother than it did before, which historically has been a weak spot for these terminal tools since they're so often built Mac and Linux first. There's also a new sandbox permission mode worth understanding. It's called Proceed in Sandbox, and what it does is auto-approve terminal commands that run inside the secure sandbox, while still stopping to ask you for manual approval the moment a command tries to step outside that sandbox. So you get speed for the safe stuff and a checkpoint for anything that could actually reach your real system. That's a sensible default, and it lines up with how other agents like Claude Code handle their own permission tiers. Free tier users also got consumer and free tier onboarding built straight into the CLI, so you can get set up without bouncing around. And there's a neat little environment variable that hides your email and plan tier from the header, which is handy if you're recording a demo or sharing your screen and don't want that info on display. The limit changes are the ones that'll actually change how you use the thing day to day. Google bumped the model rate limits in Anti-gravity, first by 3 times, and then on top of that, another 3 times for a week. Stack those, and you're looking at close to unlimited usage for that window, which is generous, especially since some developers have been complaining loudly about hitting limits too fast on the new platform. They also doubled the context length for Gemini 3.5 Flash inside Anti-gravity. The reason given was that people running hard tasks were hitting compaction over and over, which is when the system has to compress your conversation to fit the window. And every time that happens, it can quietly hurt the model's performance because it loses detail. Doubling the context means fewer of those forced compactions on big jobs, so longer sessions and larger code bases hold together better. What I take from all of this is that Google is moving fast on feedback, and they're not just fixing cosmetic stuff. The OAuth fix, the context bump, the credit handling, these are the things that actually block real work. The model quality is a separate question, and no amount of tooling polish changes how good Gemini 3.5 Flash is at the actual coding. But if the surrounding experience keeps getting tighter, and they keep this pace going into the next Gemini generation, it starts to look like a serious option. The free tier alone is solid, and the paid plan around $20 with Gemini 3.5 Flash as a coding agent is hard to argue with on price. If you've been on the fence, this is a reasonable moment to actually try it and see if the workflow clicks for you. Alright, so that's it from the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.